The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 39. Prydain. My first impression of Prydain was a positive one. Although it lacks the raw, natural beauty of Dunbrock, this is partly because it has been more thoroughly settled, and I enjoyed the thought of not spending any nights camping in the forest. The mountains, forests, and valleys are interspersed with villages and stretches of farmland, giving an impression of bucolic peace. At least, until one stumbles upon a farm whose residents have been put to the sword, and whose resources have been plundered to feed the invading armies of the realm's great enemy, the Horned King. My first encounter with those armies, however, was not one of those murderous raiding parties, but a raiding party of a different sort. I came across a large burial mound and a group of men pulling the corpses from it. Grave robbers, I thought with disdain. But, to my surprise, rather than stripping the corpses of their valuables and leaving them behind, they dragged the corpses themselves to a nearby wagon. One of the men spotted me and shouted for his compatriots, who immediately knocked their arrows to run me off. I assumed my form of dread in response. They cowered away from me, and immediately begged my forgiveness and asked if I had brought them new orders from their master. It seemed that, despite his lack of horns, my patron bore a marked resemblance to the dreaded Horned King. It was irksome that anyone would believe I had such low standards, but it could certainly be useful. The Lord. It should have been easier for me to gain information about a Dreadlord when his minions believed that I outranked them, but the mental acuity of those minions left much to be desired. They informed me that they were the Horned King's huntsmen. After a few minutes of conversation with them, I believe that the sole qualification for this position is to identify the business end of a sword at least one time out of 3, and that they were bringing the corpses back to his castle to become Cauldron born. The Horned King did not currently possess the Black Cauldron, the magic item that would allow him to reanimate these corpses as his undead army, but he had possessed it for brief periods in the past, and the huntsmen were confident that he would eventually find it again. The huntsman told me that the Horned King commanded several Cauldron-born from previous times that he had gained control of the artifact. From their descriptions, it seemed that the Cauldron-born had the mindless obedience of zombies, but were faster and hardier, immune to all non-magical forms of attack. I did not know at first whether to credit this as truth or superstition. The credulous huntsman also claimed that the Horned King was a powerful necromancer, but I saw no evidence that he had any magical abilities whatsoever, and a necromancer would have no need of the cauldron to animate the dead for him. Later encounters with the Cauldron-born, however, verified these claims. I could learn little else from the huntsman, so, after handing them a jar of spiced peaches and informing them that the Horned King wanted them to dig for corpses in Camp Green Lake, I began gathering information from other sources. It seems that the Horned King was once the general of a ruthless conqueror named Aran, and that Aran's defeat centuries ago culminated in his soul being forged into the cauldron. The Horned King continued to lead his armies on a campaign of violent conquest, but without Aran's magic to support them, they were massacred. So powerful was the Horned King's will that he was able to return from the dead. His soldiers did not follow suit. When I later traveled to the Horned King's castle, I was able to infiltrate the Hall of Warriors, in which he kept the bodies of his former soldiers, all of which were preserved with something close to tenderness, whereas the corpses from the burial mounds were crammed into the catacombs beneath the castle like garments in an overstuffed wardrobe. I cast Speak with Dead without much hope of success. Surely the Horned King's loyal soldiers would refuse to tell me anything, and was astonished by the results. For one thing, the Horned King's soldiers seemed to be trapped in some hellish state between death and undeath. They were not undead, as Speak with Dead would not have worked otherwise, but they had a level of awareness of their existence after death, hoarded away like gold in a miser's treasury. For another, they had no desire to continue serving their erstwhile general. They were dead and gone. They wanted nothing more than to pass on to their eternal rest, particularly as they knew that what little remained of their minds and memories would be destroyed in the cauldron. As the Horned King had no magic with which to speak to them, however, they could not tell him as much, nor did they believe that he would listen if they could. Thus, he continued with his obsessive desire to resurrect them, convinced that undoing the deaths he had caused was the only way he could make amends to his beloved warriors. The land. Prydain operates under a feudal system, with a high king and several vassal lords who govern their lands, called cantrevs, with a sizable amount of freedom, often having vassal lords of their own. The cantrev lords often refer to themselves as kings as well, although they owe allegiance to the high king. I can almost hear my patron rolling his eyes in monarchical contempt at the idea that anyone calling himself a king would be willing to swear fealty to a liege lord. I can assure you that if this is the case, such skepticism is well-founded. While some of these cantrev lords are steadfast, most dream of becoming the high king or queen themselves. As each is able to muster a personal army from their cantrevs, it is frankly a miracle that the Horned King has anything left to attempt to conquer. I suspect that the only reason the kingdom has not become engulfed in civil war is that the cantrev lords' vassals are as disloyal as their masters, transforming those personal armies into a hotbed of warring factions. Although the Horned King's thirst for rulership of Prydain would make him unremarkable among the cantrev lords, he is not part of the kingdom's feudal system. His realm, Anuvin, is politically a border realm of Prydain, even though they seem to be a single domain in the more metaphysical sense. Anuvin, which is dramatically called the Land of Death by its citizens and those of Prydain alike, is a desolate mountain waste, rife with necrotic energy that makes it inhospitable to living things. Small wonder that the Horned King's huntsmen raid Prydain's farms for sustenance. It is difficult to imagine anything growing in Anuvin, save the blighted trees of the Forbidden Forest. Twisted creatures called gwithaints, an uncanny blend of ravens and wyverns, hunt the skies for any prey that is able to survive in Anuvin. Rumor has it that they serve as the Horned King's eyes, although, if so, I managed to evade their detection. Other than the Horned King, the main individual who seems to exist outside the feudal system is the wizard Dalbin, although for entirely different reasons. I suppose that Dalbin could be considered a cantrev lord with no vassals, answering directly to the High King, but his cantrev consists of a single farm, protected by powerful abjuration magic. I believe I experienced the benefits of this magic firsthand when I spent the night there. I do not know whether I attempted to walk in my sleep. I tied my foot to the post of every bed I used in Prydain and found the knots secure upon waking, so if I did sleepwalk, there or anywhere else, it was literally on a short leash. I do know, however, that at Caer Dallben my sleep was untroubled by nightmares for the first time in months. On the subject of those nightmares, I have considered my patron's offer of something that will remove the need for sleep, and it is tempting. Even putting aside the sleepwalking, the dreams alone, I'm no stranger to nightmares, but these... Apologies, I digress. I am concerned about side effects. If this is, in fact, a result of stress, then losing the ability to sleep hardly seems conducive to relieving that stress, and I wonder how else it might manifest. And if there is some other cause, removing the need for sleep seems like treating a symptom rather than the underlying disease. I don't know why this is... I thank you for the offer, truly, but it seems imprudent. For the time being, I shall carry on as I have. At any rate, returning to the subject of Prydain, although Dalbin was cordial during my stay, he was not terribly forthcoming, and I had the sense that he was deliberately keeping me at arm's length. His ward, a young man named Terran, was decidedly less reserved, particularly when he learned about the scope of my travels. He longed for a life of adventure himself, and he soon began to tell me of the magical properties of Caer Dallben in the hopes of impressing me enough that I would bring him along when I left. He claimed that the Book of Three, Dalbin's magical tome, told the past, present, and future of Prydain, although anyone who attempted to touch it other than Dalbin himself would suffer agonizing pain, particularly if their intentions were malicious. If Terran was to be believed, however, there was an even stranger magical presence in Caer Dallben. Henwen, the oracular pig. Apparently, Henwen's powers of divination were so great that she could even uncover the true names of magical beings. I thought at first that Terran had come up with a particularly ludicrous attempt to capture my interest, but he had hardly begun speaking when Dalbin appeared with a stern expression, reprimanded Terran, and informed me politely but firmly that it was time for me to be on my way. Whether or not Henwen is truly a seer to rival the Vistani, there is some secret about her that Dalbin wishes to protect. Dread possibilities. I did not want to leave Prydain without a more thorough examination of the Horned King's castle. As ominous as it looked from the outside, the lackluster talents of the huntsman made it relatively easy to infiltrate. I used Mask of Many Faces to look like a muscle-bound, bearded lout and acted too drunk to stand, and within an hour, half of them were swearing they had known me for years. As mentioned, I was also able to steal away to the Hall of Warriors. Although the locks were excellent, the protections against, say, an intruder assuming gaseous form and gliding through a keyhole were minimal, further confirming my hypothesis that the Horned King was no spellcaster. The catacombs were scarcely secured at all, but the bodies had no grave goods beyond weapons and armor. I suspect anything else of value was plundered, but the arms were left behind for the corpses to use upon their reanimation. As I explored beneath the castle, I heard voices shouting in familiar accents, and I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Agrabanians. Again. I crept through the corridors toward the sound and found myself outside a sturdy door with a small barred window. Whatever the Agrabanians had done, they had gotten themselves thrown into the Horned King's dungeon. I peered through the window to see two men bickering, each assigning blame to the other for their capture, while a young woman examined the walls in an apparent quest for secret doors. I dropped below the level of the window to eavesdrop for a while, and it soon became clear that they had come at the behest of a man named Jafar, whose name I recall hearing from my patron, in the hopes of finding the cauldron for themselves. This perplexed me. As far as I know, necromancy was uncommon in Agrabah, although I suppose that would explain why this Jafar had to seek it out in other realms. My patron will be unsurprised to hear that my curiosity soon got the better of me. Agrabanians have been crossing my path for the better part of a year, and I could not help but wonder why. I stood, allowing them to see me through the window, and told them that I would be happy to free them from the Horned King's dungeon, if they told me more about why they were seeking the cauldron in the first place. The men scoffed, giving me various reasons why they would rather take their chances with the Horned King than face Jafar's wrath, but the woman seemed curious about what I had to say, and I focused my attention on her. I knew little about Jafar, but based on what I did know, I could make some educated guesses about the rest. "What's her name?" I asked her. "Sidira. Sidira, I doubt the Horned King will be any more merciful than Jafar. If you don't escape, you're going to die here, and it won't be a good death. I think you know that. I saw you looking for a way out. And if he manages to find the cauldron, death won't even be the end of it. Are you really going to suffer that for Jafar? Why? He doesn't care about you. You're a pawn to be sacrificed for an interesting magic item, and once you're gone, will he even remember your name? You can stay here and die, failing to serve a master who doesn't give a damn about you, or you can tell me what he's squandering your life on and have a chance of surviving. The choice is yours." Sidira did not have to think about it for long. "He's been finding all the criminals and street rats he can and offering us jobs. He's looking for enchantment and necromancy. I don't know why. I got stuck with necromancy. I came here because it was either going to be here, Darkon, or Barovia, and I'm not walking into Castle Ravenloft." Smart woman. Did he send people there, too? If he hasn't yet, he will. I pressed her for more details, on both Barovia and Darkon, in order to seem no more interested in one than the other, but she had none to offer. She had chosen Prydain, and she knew nothing about the other missions. Given the quality of the Horned King's minions, it was not difficult for me to acquire one of their keys and release the prisoners. I left the men to fend for themselves, but I brought Sidira with me. "It may be that Jafar's agents are of no interest to you," Yen said. "Perhaps you've already dealt with them. Or perhaps they intend to come to Darkon and obtain items through innocuous legal means, as they did in Gravity Falls." Regardless, this seemed like information worth knowing. parting thoughts. I can see why an army of near mindless and obedient undead would be appealing to one from Prydain. It seems to be the only guarantee of anything resembling loyalty, and in the Horned King's case, they would be noticeably more effective and intelligent than his current forces. However, he is doing his former soldiers no favors by forcing them to serve under him once again. He led them to their deaths, and now he will not even allow them to reap the rest that those deaths should have earned them. I took Sidira to Wyvern. It was a city large enough that even if Jafar learned she had traveled there, he would be unlikely to find her. I confess that I also hoped to take advantage of a few of its amenities before traveling to the next domain on my itinerary. If stress truly is the cause of my nocturnal troubles, a little relaxation would not come amiss. I discovered a sweet shop stocked with all manner of confections, and decided to enjoy a few myself before sending the rest to my niece. Thank the gods I opened the one I did. Thank the gods I did not send it to her. As I peeled away the paper wrapper from the chocolate in my hand, I glimpsed a flash of gold, and I froze. No. I knew precisely what I held, and I knew it was non-transferable. Not that I would ever be so cruel as to foist it upon another. I'm sorry, and said my next assignment will have to wait. I have no choice in this. I know precisely where the mists will take me the next time I enter them, and precisely where I will awaken tomorrow if I do not enter them before then. Because I've got a golden ticket. Regards, D.
The Black Cauldron is indeed a powerful relic steeped in necromancy. The ability to create an army with absolute loyalty to their master and immune to mundane weapons would tempt any belligerent warlord. Perhaps there are a few lesser necromancers that would be tempted by the creation of an undead minion whose caliber is slightly above the average skeleton. However, the majority schooled in the art would find a means to do so without the Black Cauldron's aid. My little witch is correct. The Horned King does not have the finely attuned senses of a spellcaster. He merely plays the part as a thespian upon the stage. Though I despise such falsehoods, he is correct in believing that play acting as a powerful mage will strike more fear into the hearts of his enemies than if they knew what he really was. A revenant that crawled out of his grave to seek vengeance against a master who is already gone. If the Black Cauldron could be utilized to bring true life back into his dead soldiers, his goal would be a noble one. To force them to linger only to bring them back as hollow corpses with no memory of their former life is indeed a cruel fate. But if true life was possible, for them to return to what they once were, is that not the greatest gift one can grant? A second chance at life, chance to undo past mistakes. Jafar's search for the Black Cauldron is expected. I have already personally dealt with a few street rats, the disloyal vizier sent into Darkon seeking relics of my own making. These ruffians did not have the intelligence of your Sidira and attempted to break into Castle Avernus. Rest assured I've put them to good use. I suspect that Jafar's quest mirrors that of another Dreadlord. Jafar desires nothing less than phenomenal cosmic power, the ability to transform his world as easily as snapping his fingers.
Dear Father, perhaps it is presumptuous for me to address you as such, for I have not yet earned that right. However, you expressed a desire that I would someday become your daughter, and as I have previously related, I believe that application of powerful enchantment magic, perhaps bolstered by the enchantment stone, can make this hope a reality. If that does not work, it seems likely that you will kill me when my usefulness is at an end, At the very least, he will kill any part of my mind that is recognizable as Daniel Dini, as the greater part of me will never stop resisting you unless it is entirely broken. Either the title of father is or will be accurate, or I will soon be dead, and it will not matter how I addressed you. I believe I have found the necromancy stone in Prydain, an item called the Black Cauldron. It is unsurprising that it is not the object of Aslan's interest. As he is an accomplished necromancer, the cauldron offers little that he cannot achieve through his own spell work. Besides that, he has stated that he is seeking something of Agrabanian provenance, which does not describe the cauldron. Per your instructions to speculate on the potential applications of each stone, the comparative advantages and disadvantages of living in undead armies are well documented, and I need not restate them here. The Cauldron-born's immunity to mundane weaponry, however, makes them a more potent force than the typical skeleton or zombie. An approach combining the living and the undead could prove devastating. As you can see from my latest report to Aslan, there are two potential sources of powerful divination magic in Caer Dallben. Whether or not either of them is the divination stone, which I still believe is in the hands of either Dr. Facilier, Queen Narcissa, or Jack Sparrow, they are well worth further investigation, as divination will aid you in your search. However, the protective enchantments on the Book of Three may prove prohibitive, as only Dallben can touch it. I do not know how powerful Dallben is, and I cannot speculate on whether or not you can break him, nor do I know whether the book will continue to function for him if you do. I am working on the problem of how best to permanently bend my will to yours while retaining the tenacity that drew your attention. I have been using my dreams to formulate solutions, as well as to analyze potential applications of Infinity Stones. Thus far, as I previously suggested, the most likely possibility without use of the enchantment stone is a thorough application of Modify Memory, which would be effective but impractical. I believe my will is preventing me from making breakthroughs in this area even in my sleep, but I will continue to apply myself to the question. I must also note that, as this Jafar is searching for sources of enchantment magic, he may find the stone first if he is not dealt with. Interrogating his agents as you did me may provide insights on its location. Aslan continues to suspect nothing, attributing my nocturnal episodes either to stress or to surges of wild magic. His intellect is matched only by his arrogance. He cannot consider the possibility that someone could establish a foothold in the mind of his little scholar without his knowledge. This will doubtless work to your advantage. The longer he fails to notice that I serve two masters, the more of an insult it will be to his pride, and the more stubbornly he will refuse to acknowledge the oversight. By the time he is able to admit his failure, you will already have claimed both that which he seeks and myself for your own. Hail Thanos. D. This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at DarklordAslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening.